Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for this, our third session in the Crisis Coach 2018 webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about your school and crisis communications, trust and resiliency as brand attributes. We always say that preparedness and resilience are indeed brand attributes, and we know that parents of your students and prospective students want to know that you know what to do in a crisis. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to follow up a little bit on what we did last month and follow up a little bit on that exercise. If you weren't with us last month, you can certainly get that information or watch that video on our YouTube channel. Just send an email to webinars@firestorm.com. We'll be happy to help you with that. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, on our YouTube channel, and on LinkedIn. And if you do have a question and you'd like to engage using social media, you can use the hashtag CrisisCoach, and we'll see that message and get back to you. The easiest way to communicate with us is if you'll open your GoToWebinar widget. It should be on the right side of your screen, a little dashboard there. There's a chat area. You can ask a question in the chat area, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. And as a matter of fact, I forgot I wanted to upload something there. So for those of you on the call, I'll send you something after the session because I forgot to put it here on the site. Bill Baker is our moderator today. He's there just in case I lose connectivity, and if you have a question, let me know. So say hi to Bill when you send a message, and we'll move forward. Our attorneys always like us to tell you that this session is not complete without any accompanying oral comments and discussion. The work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your organization's personal counsel. And the information given and comments made in this session should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. As I mentioned to you in the last couple of webinars, Firestorm is experiencing a really productive and wonderful growth period. Our Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Program, or BRTHA, is receiving national attention, and Firestorm has created an environment where no matter what crisis you may be experiencing in your school, we have 360-degree resources and solutions for you in crisis risk, in people solutions if you're looking to recruit, or if you're looking to explore. Security solutions, that's our BRTHA program, active shooter training and certifications related to assessments and general security in your school. And then there's the expertise there is from the Secret Service. So we bring White House security to your schoolhouse. Professional services solutions include all of your assessments, plans, training, conducting exercises. Our intelligence solutions, that's predictive intelligence, artificial intelligence, learning, to help you get data when you need it. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And analytical solutions, benchmarking against best of class, compensation reports, and other custom data reports based upon extensive data sets. So you can get some pretty important data in a crisis, and that's always really important. I would like to thank the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, where we've been exceptionally well supported over the past few years by your director, Dr. Rich Martin, and by Jill, the assistant director. And we look forward to continuing this rich association. You can visit the website for the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, learn more about upcoming events, resources, the Career Center, and other important initiatives that are going on in your state for independent schools.
Karen?
Also, as a member of the Tennessee Association of Independent... Yes.
Karen, Rich is on.
Yes, Bill? Yes. Oh, I didn't know Rich was with us. I'm sorry. Hey,
Well, I
Rich,
got here just in time.
would you like to say something to our audience? I was just going to explain that everybody has access to a crisis stop hour in case of crisis. What else would you like to say, and what upcoming events might be of interest?
All right. Well, of course, yes, there is that hour of free consulting with Firestorm that all TAIS schools have the privilege of using, and I want to make sure you all know about that. Other TAIS events coming up that are important and significant. In April, on the 9th of April, the Future of School and Work Conference in Chattanooga is a great, it's a version, or it's the latest iteration of our Innovation and Technology Institute that we hold every spring, and this one will be held in Chattanooga at the Innovation Center, the Edney Center there, and the library. So that will be a great one, and it's coming right up. The 16th of April, we have an admissions mini-conference that will be held in Nashville, and that's another significant event, and one that a lot of schools are attending. It'll have a lot of great information on the latest news about admissions in independent schools. So other than those things, I turn it back to you and Karen and Bob, Bill, and let it go forward.
Well, thank you, Rich. As always, we appreciate your support and your involvement. And I have been at that center in Chattanooga, and it's cool, and I hope y'all have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's move forward and talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So last month, we set up a scenario. We did a mini scenario where we talked about a situation or crisis that was occurring in a school. And so we're going to move forward with that today and talk about the crisis communications that then may ensue. So we're sort of part two, and actually all of our webinars hooked together in some way, but let's think of it as this is part two. So the first thing that's important that we understand is that a crisis or a disaster is unexpected. Now, we should anticipate, but it's unexpected. We don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to play out. It disrupts normal operational processes, and it does have the potential to create significant financial, security, safety, and reputational harm. We know that, especially if it's something that you're allowing to continue or ignoring, because we know that denial is not a strategy. There's hope. Depending on the nature and the severity of the crisis, the safety and well-being of people in your under your purview may be endangered, and there may be complex risks and threats. And we know that better today as far as our schools than ever before. And we're in very trying times now. Typically, these events are viewed as singularities. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is that you cannot view a crisis or disaster as an outlier, as so not likely to happen to me kind of an event, because we must be prepared if that event does happen to us. And I'm also going to apologize. Roxanne the Wonder Dog is with me today, and so if you hear any barking or any odd noises in the background, that is Roxanne. I want to talk about today that these singular events, these that'll never happen to us events, must be considered and planned for. They must become could happen to us, might happen to us events. And the more prepared you are for an event, and we all, knock on wood, hope it never ever occurs, right? But let's go ahead and prepare for it and make sure we're aware of it, because research and analysis suggests that in reality, crises and disasters have recognizable life cycles. And they really have somewhat predictable stages. So let's assume something is going to occur, and then let's plan for it. And today we're going to talk about the communications aspects of the crisis. So last month we had the crisis, remember? It unfolded in 15 minutes. We had a student claiming that someone had inappropriate contact with the student. We don't know if it was a female student or a male student. We just know that something happened. And we want to make sure that the way we respond to crises and events highlight the health and safety of everyone from top to bottom, side to side, in our organizations, the communities, and that we demonstrate through our response to a crisis a sincerity of purpose that is represented across our organizational brand, so that when parents come to us to look at our schools and decide whether this is the right place for their children, our brand goes before us and says, yes, we have a commitment to safety, to honesty, to whatever the teaching may be. This is our brand. So we have to establish that very clearly. Why? This is a camera view. I mean, this is a picture of the media trucks that were on the ground to greet our team when our team arrived at Virginia Tech in response to the shootings there. Our CEO was called in by the president of Virginia Tech to come and assist that. And at the time, that was the worst case of school shooting in the United States, in the country, in the world. And this was the media circus for days and days. And that's what you may, at some point in time, be facing. And it's more than just the day of the event or the week of the event. This went on for many weeks on Virginia Tech's campus. But think of those folks in Florida today. Think about the walk yesterday that had media attention on everyone's schools. Every time there is an instance or happening in the trial, the spotlight will be on your school, your administration. Every anniversary for years and years to come. So you must be prepared and mature about your communications. So how do we set program maturity goals? And that word maturity, we know, and you're educators. So it's a little different when I speak with businesses, but y'all understand the maturity factor in communications. And so that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get from juvenile to mature. And a mature program has assigned roles and responsibilities, and we have home bases. We have clear bases of communication and message maps. And we also have a developed catalog of communication. So we thought about a number of different types of events that may happen. We have a catalog of responses and communications to those. We have a playbook that helps us move forward. Culturally, we understand that there is a need to communicate in that disciplined, organized fashion. Whether you are 2 people in your educational organization or 2,000, the communication anomalies that can occur are the same. So you must be clear, concise, and disciplined in how you communicate. And we need to understand transparency. The word transparency and disruption, being a disruptor, those have been thrown around rather cavalierly over the past 10 years or so, especially with social media. People think social media allows us to be more transparent. Well, is that always necessarily what we want? Is transparency always going to keep people safer? And that's the bottom line goal, right? It's not about hiding anything. It's about what do we need to do to keep our communications disciplined so that we can keep people safe. And so we have to understand how transparency is defined in your organization. All right. As a Tennessee school today, I want you to figure out which of these are you. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, let's look at it one by one. And this is a maturity model that is proprietary to Firestorm. And it really clearly defines what we see as the different stages in a mature organization. And the first stage, and I want you to really be sitting there and thinking objectively about your organization, and let's move you forward. Whatever stage you're in today, let's make a commitment to be at the next stage or better in your stage by the end of the year. Let's just make that one commitment that we will move up a stage by the end of the year. If you do it by the middle of the year, more power to us. So the first stage is a liability stage. This is where everything that happens in your organization, not just during a crisis, but everything, is a surprise. When it comes to decision making in a crisis, the process is developed or you respond on the fly. A bunch of people run into a room, we all sit down and debate about what we're going to do next, and we look for fault. Additionally, we call in the experts. We activate that crisis stop program Firestorm has for you, way too late or not at all. We think we can handle this. And then we proceed to argue and debate about the actual process we're going to follow. The roles and responsibilities are completely confused. Nobody's really clear on who's going to do what and when. You know, when we are on a ship, there is a captain, and there's a clear reason why there's a captain. That captain is responsible for a very specific set of responsibilities. In your school, there is a school head or whatever your school may designate that role to be. That is the person who is responsible for a very clear set of decisions. However, in a crisis, you may modify who leads that crisis and who leads some of those decisions, and it may change depending upon the crisis and the expertise required. So these are things we have to think about ahead of time, because without it, people will do what they want or what they think is most beneficial at the time that is not necessarily appropriate. People will change what they're doing, and there will be a great deal of confusion. And the decision processes will not be clear, and you're going to miss things. Things are going to fall through the cracks. Next, when it comes to information on which to base decisions, right? We can't make decisions unless we know what we're dealing with. Well, in this sort of an environment, it's impossible to get any kind of real data. We know that in the first a few hours of a crisis or a disaster, everything we learn is going to be wrong. And if you are going to the media to get your information, that's a real problem, right? Because they're going to put out whatever they feel is going to sell advertising, not what the truth may necessarily be. So it's difficult to obtain data to really understand what's going on. Let's say there's an event on your campus, and someone tells you it's okay, 100% of our students have been evacuated and are safe, when in actuality, only 70% of students have been evacuated and safe. There were other buildings or other classrooms that for some reason were not evacuated. That's information you need to know, right? Because it results in a different set of activities and actions. Excuse me for just one moment. I'm going to cough. Okay, I'm better. So without good data, it's going to slow any good response from the organization. People aren't going to know what to do. And then when it comes to decision-making that can mean the difference between life and death, process is slow, the events escalate and outpace your ability to lead, there is serious confusion, and your team is overwhelmed. It is a wave of overwhelming indecision that occurs, and people become frozen, or they make rash and potentially dangerous decisions when put under pressure. There is no way you can communicate about this. If during whatever this crisis is, your local news or national news is suddenly knocking on your door or ringing your phone, and your people who are responding to those calls are under pressure, they may speak when they are not directed to, and the messages are going to be confusing, they're going to be reactive, they're going to miss key channels, and they're not going to be timely. They're not going to address what concerns parents, students, others in your community may actually have. So we need to think about that, right? How are we going to get that information? How are we going to be organized enough? Who does that in your organization? Who's assigned with that task? It may not be someone in your organization. It could be a third party. You could activate Firestorm's intelligence module and just say, during this event, we need you to monitor what's going on and feed us data so we can make decisions. But plan it out ahead of time. That'll move you into the second stage, which is the basic maturity stage. This is where you're reactive, but you're not completely disorganized. So you have a general generic process. The decision rights aren't completely clear, and there's some degree of confusion, but at least you're able to get everybody at the table together and say, okay, we downloaded this decision-making tree from the web in case we had a crisis. At least we got something to go by. We don't want you to do that. We want you to work with us, but it's better than nothing at all. And the roles and responsibilities are somewhat clear, but you're sort of defining them on the fly too. Okay, Susie, you're the English teacher. You're really good with language. You have a law degree as well, so why don't you go ahead and be in charge of messaging? And maybe that'll work. But doing it in the middle of the crisis is not necessarily the best idea. Support resources are not defined. Most of the issues are covered, and that's a key information piece there about the resources. The more organized you are, the less resources it takes, and those resources are put to better and more efficient use. Information. So now we talked about we need to make decisions, can't make decisions without some good information. So in this case, we have some basic data. There's a delayed response in getting the data, so when we communicate out, we may be incorrect or delayed in our communication. And it's difficult to obtain precise information. We have a lot of people telling us, well, we think 3 people are trapped. Well, we're not sure if there's another person who is a threat. Things are a bit vague. There's a lack then of timely decision making, and we're reacting to events in still a reactive manner, which is more highly resource intensive. And we have some established messaging. We kind of know how we're going to get an information out. We have a black website, a dark website that we can put an emergency message up on. We've never tested that, by the way, so we don't know if the website's going to crash, but we think we're okay. And we kind of have most of our major messaging addressed, but everything's very reactive. We're putting stuff out as fast as we can, and the person putting it out is stressed and nervous and concerned, and she or he is making, there's a lot of mistakes going on, but at least we're getting something out. Now let's move into stage 3, and this is where a lot of really great companies and schools and organizations sit who've been working on their program for a while. This is pre-active phase, where pre-action is the word, and it's supportive of everyone in the organization or those affected by your school. Decision processes are structured. They're defined. There are clear decision rights with little debate. So when everybody sits down at the table, everybody's in agreement. We know what we're doing next and how we're going to do it. The roles and responsibilities are clearly defined and aligned with processes and event types, because not everyone is in the right position for every crisis all the time. You may have certain people who have expertise in one type of crisis and others with expertise in another, a weather event as opposed to a violence event. You may have different people in charge or making decisions, and those people recognize that they have different support resources that may be required depending on those different events. Basic data and how you're going to get it is predefined. You know what kind of information you're going to need. You have event-specific information that's quickly identified. You know where we all, in schools, excel at this is weather. We know, because meteorology has come so far, that it can tell us far in advance when some type of weather event is going to occur. So we have data, we have information, we've practiced, we can make decisions. If there's a fire or some type of event such as that, we know what to do. We practice, we plan, there are resources available. And the organization responds quickly and nimbly because of that. So we need to apply that to a variety of other events. There's timely decision-making, great response to events, and you have a relatively efficient process. People make better decisions when they're not pressured in order to come up with something, especially when people's lives are at stake. Your messaging is defined, you know the process, you know the channels, you have message maps started in a general way, some standardization, and you can at least reach to that in order to move communication forward. Jim Satterfield, our CEO, tells a story quite often, and it's quite a touching story, and it relates to a situation on 911 in a company he worked with. Everybody came to the table to talk about this incredible event that had happened and the impact on people. And Jim was working with the human resources professional and said, let's go ahead and tell people if they feel they need to leave today, they can go ahead and do that. As a matter of fact, in order to keep, a rush to the door, let's stage how they, leave floor by floor or something, just so we don't have any problems with traffic. Let's just go ahead and let them know they can exit. And the human resource director was really shaken, as were we all. And when she went back to her desk, she wrote a memo trying to explain what Jim had said they were going to do. And the memo she wrote said, if you want to live, leave. What she meant to write was, if you want to leave, leave. But she was shaken up. She didn't have she was just shaken up. So let's not put people in a position, because she created a secondary crisis for herself. She felt terrible. We don't want to put people in that position, right? Now, generally, the last area is what we really want to work toward, and that is a culture of strategic, mature communication. This is where we have a clear playbook, and remember that word playbook, that's important, for major crisis types and clear and known decision rights. You can start this week. Just start this week on one item. Once a month, say, we're going to sit down, we're going to take 15 minutes, we're going to say, what happens if we have an XYZ event, and at least move it forward more than you have today. Think of things you haven't thought about. By the end of the year, you will have 10 or so new structured events, and you will have matured your program that much more. Define the responsibilities. In this culture, we have clearly defined and established roles and responsibilities, and they are predefined by event type. We have identified what support resources we're going to need, who in the community our contacts are, who's in charge of contacting those people, and we are well trained on all of those areas covered. We know where we're getting information on which to base decisions, and we know how to activate that. You know, when I'm working with many companies to set up, and schools to set up predictive intelligence, the first thing I let them know is we're going to be monitoring for you. If I see a threat, what is the escalation tree? Who needs to be involved, and how do they get the information? And that is the one thing people don't answer because they haven't thought about it. So they say, just go ahead and monitor and let us know. What does that mean, let us know? Because during a crisis, especially one that involves the health and the safety of those in your care, a generic let us know doesn't cut it. We need clear definition on what that workflow is for that communication tree. And we need fast, and we need to get that data fast so that we can make the right decisions based upon the truth, not assumption. That highly efficient and timely decision-making process is going to help us anticipate next events that may occur and the needs and resources that may be required to meet those. When we were back in the immature stage, everybody sitting around the table, we're still arguing about who's going to do what. This group, this mature group, is able to say, you know what, in 6 months, this is going to be the effect this event has had upon us. You're going to be able to anticipate and plan far out in the future. And that saves money. It saves resources. And our messaging is going to be effective. Predefined messages for major event types, and the messaging is going to do what messaging is designed to do. Correct incorrect information, lead people to safety and to safe information, and improve the entire situation rather than confuse it. So now that we've gone through all of these different stages, now where would you say you are? Are you able to control the crisis, align your resources, and add value to your organization by moving up in your level of maturity as an organization in the way you respond to a crisis? Now, throughout this, we need to remember that we have other people with their own self-interest that are going to be inserting themselves into your crisis. We have newspapers or other types of print media. They need to find ways to get their advertisers to pay attention. And sadly, it's the old adage, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. So if they can keep your story at the top of their readers' view, it's important to them to keep stirring it up, to look for angles that don't even exist. You don't communicate through the media. You now, because of social media, have the ability to communicate directly with your constituency without having to leverage somebody else's organization to do so. You have a website, you have a Twitter account, you have a Facebook account, you have an Instagram account, you have email, you have notification systems, you have all of the things in place to be able to communicate effectively the way you need to the people who need to listen. Have it ready to go. Otherwise, you will feel like you are forced to speak to the media, and you're not. You don't have to talk to them at all. TV news has become a channel of entertainment. Remember that. Ad time is sold by creating controversy. The media text messages and sound bites. Social media can create a hero or a villain overnight. The wave of how you manage social media is very important here. We know that fake news travels faster than real news. It's the old telephone game from our youth, from my youth anyway. So we want to make sure that we have clear and concise, mature communication coming out from the start, because social media can destroy now in 280 characters that which you may have built since your school was founded. We're not going to let that happen. So make sure you've defined your house brand. What is your school's house brand? You are a Tennessee independent school. How do you control your message regarding your brand and reputation? When you communicate, what is the goal of that process? Always ask yourself that before you communicate out. Who determined the look and feel of your messaging? We have differences here. We have marketing, then we have some crisis communication. Marketers are trained to engage. Crisis communication, not necessarily so. We're going to educate. We're going to lead people to right decisions. Those are two different styles. So let's talk about what is the branding we use in a crisis and what is the branding we use in our general marketing. Because I need to pay attention to the crisis communication. And if you brand it all the same, with the same type of messaging, I may not see what I need to see. And in order to communicate well, we have got to have defined, that was poor English, I apologize, but we have to define the building blocks. I worked for an organization once, a global organization. We had offices all over, and I selected 9 offices in the United States, actually in North America. And I said, let me call them, and I'm going to ask them all the same question. I'm going to ask them, what is our mission statement? And I got 9 different answers. Ask people in your organization. Ask your newest employee, your newest teacher, what is the mission of our organization? Let's first make sure everybody speaks with one voice. Then let's define what our philosophy is on risk so that our people know. I want to work for an organization that values my life, my time, and they demonstrate that to me by making resiliency and preparedness a priority. Then I need to know what the communication policy is. If I go out to my car, if we're in the middle of a crisis and somebody puts a microphone in my face, am I allowed to talk to them? Or is there someone I should refer them to in the organization? Because I would really like it if somebody said, just say this to the media. Thank you for your interest in this event. I will take your name and information and give it to our media contact. That's it. And then define, why are you communicating? Let's look at the reasons why we communicate. First, we want to build, maintain, or restore trust after a significant event. We want to make sure that we are guiding and encouraging the appropriate attitudes, decisions, actions, and behaviors of those interacting or listening to our message. We want to provide the truth. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of false information. It's not malicious. It just happens in a confusing crisis. And then we want to advocate for collaboration and cooperation during a crisis event. We want to make sure people are well taken care of and have resources and know what is next. Now let's talk just really quickly about that whole transparency idea. Sit down with your key people around the table and ask them this question. Say, is there a difference between transparency and complete disclosure? And listen to the conversation. There may be confusion about what is appropriate. Every time I have seen an incident occur, whether it has been a false incident or a false alarm, like with the Northwestern reported shooting on their campus yesterday. I see parents on Facebook saying, why aren't we getting information from the school? Why aren't they telling us more? If we pre-educate the parents in our community and let them know that we never communicate if we don't know all the facts because we don't want to endanger them, or we never communicate about employees, current or past, or whatever our rules of engagement are, if we let people know that ahead of time, when the time comes for that question between transparency and complete disclosure, that will already have been answered for us. In your organization, is transparency a core value, or is it an unfortunate side effect? Ask your team that. Ask your team how our audiences, our parents, our students, our community, the mayor, the police department, the fire department, how they receive information from us. See if your team is clear on that. Now, your homework for next month, over the next month. This was our mini exercise from last week. We had a situation where we had someone use the #MeToo hashtag, the name of our school, and insinuate that they were harassed or inappropriately had contact with an educator in our school. That was our event. It unfolded in about 15 minutes, got really ugly, started spreading and going viral on social media. We talked about how we can get data, how you can use Firestorm Intelligence Solutions to feed you data so that you can make good, solid decisions. Now we have to communicate about it. And we're not sure who to communicate with. We're not sure. Do we communicate to parents? We don't know anything yet. When do we communicate? We have a parent who's sharing the information on school. Remember, we had our part-time Facebook person try to engage and create a secondary issue. We have everybody calling us wanting information. So your next step is to create a message map to respond to this situation. You may never use your message map, but at least you'll have the messaging down in case you decide communicating is appropriate, but you don't have to communicate. The first thing you're going to do is say, why are we communicating? What do we want each target audience to know? We're going to define that. We have parents, we have students, we have teachers, we have other staff members. We have the association that we belong to. We are then going to identify if there are any incorrect information out there that we have to correct or erroneous information. We're going to create 3 key messages that communicate our overarching talking points. Sorry, Roxanne the Wonder Dog is whining in the background. We're going to prepare supporting messages. We're going to keep those messages simple and short. Then we're going to document how we're going to communicate and through what channels. And then we're going to practice. We're going to practice saying whatever the elevator speech about the crisis is. That's it. You do that today, do that once a month or twice a month, and you will move your organization to the next level as a crisis communication resilient organization. What next? Well, I was supposed to put a little infographic here for you on crisis, communicating in a crisis, but I do know who's attended today, and I'll go ahead and forward that to you. I want you to assess where you are today. You can call us for assistance with that. We're going to do it at no fee. And I'm going to put you together with a terrific person who's going to walk you through that assessment and give you a report. And remember, you can take advantage of our Crisis Stop program. where if you are in a crisis, we're going to help you for that first hour because you're a member of the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. Remember to register for next month's webinar. This is the infographic that I will be sending you. You can also find it yourself on our website under Resources, Infographs. And again, my deep thanks to the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. If you'd like a copy of this session, it will be posted on our YouTube channel within a couple of hours. You can always reach out to us at webinars@firestorm.com or at my personal email. Be happy to assist you in any way possible. That said, have a wonderful day, have great communications, and I look forward to speaking to you next month. This will end today's session. Thank you very much.